There comes a moment in many lives when the routines that once provided comfort begin to feel like chains, when the predictable rhythms of ordinary existence transform from reassurance into suffocation. You wake at the same hour, travel the same routes, exchange the same pleasantries with the same faces, perform the same tasks in the same spaces, and return home to repeat the cycle endlessly. Something inside you begins to rebel against this repetition, a quiet voice that grows louder with each passing day, whispering that this cannot be all there is, that somewhere beneath the surface of your domesticated existence lies a wilder, more authentic version of yourself that you have buried under layers of social conformity and practical necessity. This feeling, this creeping dissatisfaction with normal life, is neither new nor unusual. In fact, it represents something fundamental about human nature that a Renaissance political philosopher named Niccolo Machiavelli understood with startling clarity over 5 centuries ago. Machiavelli has become synonymous with cunning manipulation and ruthless pragmatism, yet his insights cut far deeper than the caricature suggests. Writing in early 16th century Florence, observing the turbulent politics of Italian city-states and the machinations of princes and republics, Machiavelli recognized something essential about human psychology that explains why comfortable normalcy eventually becomes unbearable. He understood that humans are not creatures designed for contentment, not beings who naturally settle into peaceful satisfaction once their basic needs are met. Instead, we are driven by what he called appetite, an endless hunger that cannot be satisfied, a restless energy that propels us constantly toward new desires even as we achieve old ones. This insight explains the paradox that haunts modern existence, why prosperity and security often breed discontent rather than gratitude, why the very stability we claim to want becomes the cage we desperately seek to escape. The normal life that modern society offers operates on a fundamental premise that Machiavelli would have recognized as naive. It assumes that humans want security above all else, that we will gladly trade excitement for stability, adventure for predictability, autonomy for safety. Build a good life by following the established path, get an education that leads to stable employment, find a partner and establish a household, accumulate possessions and financial security. Participate in the approved social rituals. The promise embedded in this prescription suggests that following these steps leads to satisfaction, that normal life represents the optimal solution to the problem of human existence. Yet Machiavelli understood that human nature resists optimization, that we are not problems to be solved, but forces to be reckoned with, and that our appetites cannot be satisfied through comfortable routine. Consider what happens psychologically when life becomes too normal, too predictable, too secure. The initial relief gives way gradually to something darker. The routines that provided structure begin to feel mechanical. The security that promised peace delivers boredom instead. The social roles that offered identity start to feel like costumes you cannot remove. Machiavelli would recognize this progression immediately because he understood that humans require more than mere survival or comfort. We need challenge, risk, the possibility of both triumph and disaster. We need to test ourselves against uncertainty, to exercise what he called virtù, that combination of skill, courage, and decisive action that distinguishes the remarkable from the mediocre. Normal life systematically eliminates these opportunities. It smooths away the rough edges, minimizes risk, replaces genuine challenge with manufactured busyness, substitutes real stakes with symbolic ones. The modern workplace exemplifies this trap perfectly. Most jobs offer neither genuine autonomy nor meaningful challenge. Instead, they provide carefully circumscribed responsibilities, endless meetings that substitute discussion for decision, metrics that measure activity rather than impact, and hierarchies that reward compliance over initiative. You spend your days navigating bureaucratic procedures, managing expectations, performing competence in ways that have little to do with actual achievement. Machiavelli, who served as a diplomat and administrator in the Florentine Republic, understood organizational dynamics intimately. He would recognize immediately how modern institutions domesticate human energy, channeling the appetite for achievement into harmless outlets that serve organizational stability rather than individual flourishing. The frustration you feel in such environments is not personal weakness, but rational response to a system designed to neutralize the very qualities that make life feel vital. The social dimension of normal life creates its own suffocation. Human relationships in domesticated existence tend toward a particular pattern. They become transactional rather than transformative, comfortable rather than challenging, predictable rather than surprising. You know what your partner will say before they speak. Your friends occupy assigned roles in your social ecosystem. Family gatherings follow unvarying scripts. These relationships provide stability and support, certainly, but they also create a kind of prison where everyone is complicit in maintaining the comfortable fiction that this is enough, that contentment represents the highest human achievement. Machiavelli understood that humans are political animals, not just in the governmental sense, but in the deeper meaning of that term. We are beings who find our fullest expression in the dynamic interplay of power, ambition, conflict, and alliance. Normal life tries to domesticate these energies, to redirect them into approved channels like competitive consumption or vicarious identification with sports teams or political tribes. The substitution never quite works because the appetite demands real stakes, genuine risk, actual consequences. This restlessness intensifies as you age because time itself becomes more precious and more obviously finite. In youth, normal life feels like a temporary condition, something you are passing through on your way to whatever comes next. But as years accumulate, the possibility emerges that this might be all there is, that the temporary condition has become permanent reality, that you have somehow sleepwalked into a life you never consciously chose. Machiavelli would recognize this moment as crucial because it forces confrontation with what he called fortuna, the realm of chance and circumstance that shapes human destiny. Normal life pretends to insulate you from fortuna, to create a bubble of predictability within which you can safely exist. But fortuna cannot be escaped, only engaged or avoided. The price of avoidance is the slow death of everything that makes you feel alive. The philosopher understood something else that illuminates modern discontent. He recognized that humans need not just comfort, but glory, not just security, but recognition, not just survival, but the sense that our lives matter in some larger context. Normal life offers substitutes for these deeper needs. It provides consumer choices instead of genuine freedom, social media validation instead of real recognition, busy schedules instead of meaningful purpose. These substitutes work for a while, perhaps for years, but eventually their inadequacy becomes impossible to ignore. You find yourself scrolling through curated images of other people's apparently more interesting lives, wondering why your own existence feels so hollow despite checking all the boxes that supposedly define success. Machiavelli would diagnose this malaise immediately. The appetite demands not just experiences, but significance, not just comfort, but the sense that your actions matter, that your existence registers in the world, that you are something more than an interchangeable unit consuming and producing within a vast economic machine. The question then becomes what to do with this recognition. One response is to numb the discontent, to double down on the distractions that normal life provides. Work harder, consume more, fill every moment with activity, avoid silence and stillness where dangerous questions might emerge. This strategy works until it does not, until the numbness itself becomes unbearable, until you realize you are not living, but merely existing, not experiencing, but merely passing time. Another response is to fantasize about dramatic escape, to imagine chucking it all and moving to an island, or joining a monastery, or hiking the Appalachian Trail. These fantasies provide temporary relief, but rarely translate into action, because they substitute one form of avoidance for another. They imagine that the problem is your circumstances, rather than something deeper about how you relate to existence itself. Machiavelli would suggest a different path, one that acknowledges the appetite rather than trying to suppress or redirect it. This path requires recognizing that normal life is not wrong or bad, but simply insufficient for beings constituted as humans are. It means identifying the specific ways in which your current existence fails to engage your deeper capacities, and then taking deliberate action to change this. Not through dramatic gestures, but through incremental choices that align your daily reality more closely with your actual nature. This might mean seeking work that involves genuine risk and reward rather than comfortable mediocrity. It might mean cultivating relationships that challenge rather than merely comfort you. It might mean engaging with your community in ways that exercise real political power rather than symbolic participation. It might mean pursuing mastery in some domain where excellence is possible and recognizable. The key insight is that the appetite cannot be satisfied, but it can be engaged. Machiavelli never promised happiness or contentment because he understood these as fleeting states rather than achievable destinations. What he offered instead was a vision of life lived at higher intensity, with greater awareness of what is actually at stake, with fuller engagement of human capacities that normal life leaves dormant. This vision does not require becoming a prince or conquering a city-state. It requires only that you stop pretending comfort is enough, that you acknowledge the restless hunger that normal life can never feed, and that you begin making choices that honor this truth about your nature rather than denying it. The discomfort you feel with normal life is not a problem to be solved, but a signal to be heeded. It tells you that you are capable of more than you are currently expressing, that your life has contracted to fit the available space rather than expanding to claim new territory, that you have traded too much for too little. Machiavelli would recognize this signal immediately because he built his entire political philosophy on the recognition that humans are not satisfied with mere existence, that we require challenge and risk and the possibility of distinction. Normal life offers none of these things. It offers instead a kind of comfortable death, a slow suffocation dressed up as success. The path forward requires courage, not because it is dangerous, but because it means abandoning the pretense that normal life should be enough, that something is wrong with you for wanting more, that maturity means accepting comfortable limitation. Machiavelli understood that the highest human capacities emerge only when engaged with real stakes, real challenges, real possibilities for both failure and triumph. Normal life systematically eliminates these conditions in the name of security and stability. The price of this elimination is the slow erosion of everything that makes you feel genuinely alive. Recognizing this truth does not solve anything, but it clarifies everything. The question is not how to make normal life feel satisfying, but whether you have the courage to acknowledge that it never will, and then to begin the difficult work of building something different, something that honors the appetite rather than trying to domesticate it into submission.